Every politician in this country needs to answer this question about the government-mandated lockdowns. Here we go. If the risk of COVID-19 transmission intra-family is high, and it is, according to German epidemiologist Professor Hendrik Streeck, who found that the risk of contracting COVID-19 is highest among your own family while locked down in your home, but COVID-19 transmission risk via casual contact is low, and it is, according to the Taiwan CDC, who tracked the contacts of 32 infected people and found zero transmission of the virus outside people's homes and family members. And if extreme social distancing, aka government-mandated lockdown, reduces herd immunity, and it does, according to Harvard researchers who say too strict of social distancing could cause a giant second wave of the virus when the extreme measures are relaxed because of low herd immunity. And if the risk of elderly people contracting the virus is higher because of the lockdowns, and it is, according to a New York physician who teaches at an Ivy League institution, because the lockdowns don't stop transmission. They just slow it down temporarily, and therefore, the longer it takes to build herd immunity, the more at-risk people are at risk. And if the projection models were wrong from day one, and they were, and if our hospitals aren't overwhelmed and forced to deny care to COVID patients, and they're not, if the only hospitals shutting down are closing because they don't have any patients, because government officials have prohibited so-called non-essential surgeries and procedures, and if sunlight kills the COVID-19 virus, and it does, according to a new U.S. government study that the Department of Homeland Security says could eventually change public policy, and if the prevalence of COVID-19 in the population is higher than originally assumed, and therefore the infection fatality rate is much lower, and the hospitalization rate is lower too, and it is, according to antibody prevalent studies in Santa Clara, California, that found a 3% incidence rate, which reduces the infection fatality rate to 0.13%, and in LA County, which found a 4.1% incidence rate, which reduces the infection fatality rate to between 0.1 and 0.3%, and in Chelsea, Massachusetts, where tests found 32% of those tested positive for COVID-19 antibodies, and at a New York City maternity ward where 210 asymptomatic pregnant women were tested and a whopping 13.7% tested positive for the virus, and at a Boston homeless shelter where half the residents tested positive but only one ended up showing symptoms, not to mention the German, Dutch, and French studies all showing the same thing. And if we know people die from the lockdowns because of the lockdowns, from delayed medical treatment, suicide, starvation, abuse, and economic devastation, then how can politicians imposing the lockdowns on us justify the lockdowns and pretend to care about science? If you care about science and the data, then the lockdowns are insane, and the data shows it.